In this video, I'll explain the limited circumstances in which you can self-sponsor your UK visa. Now, the first topic is whether you can assign a certificate of sponsorship to yourself. Well, in all cases except one, the answer is no. And if you did so, then you'd be prohibited from having a license, so your license would be revoked. Let's say that you're currently outside of the UK and you're looking to be sponsored on a skilled worker visa. Well, the UK entity would need to have a sponsor license. And if you're applying for one, then you'd need to appoint so-called key personnel. The rule is here. So you can see that two of the key personnel are the authorising officer and the level 1 user. So leaving aside the exception, which I'm coming to in a moment, you as the visa applicant outside of the UK are not going to be able to fulfill these two roles. Also, if you're looking to incorporate the UK entity that is going to be sponsoring you, then it's going to be challenging to set up a UK bank account for that company. And the supporting documents that you need for the sponsor license application include a corporate bank statement. Now, there's mixed results for companies applying for a sponsor license using one of the challenger banks like Revolut. Generally, you're going to need a traditional high street bank, and they won't allow you to open a corporate bank account unless you have UK residency. So for these reasons, you could not appoint yourself to any of the key personnel roles as the overseas intended skilled worker applicant, because you'd not be based in the UK at the time of the sponsor license application. There's another independent reason why you could not be appointed specifically as the level 1 user, and that's because the level 1 user must be British or settled, which you're not if you're applying to be sponsored on a skilled worker visa. So in this definition of the settled worker, you can see there's different kinds of indefinite leave to remain that count, but you're not going to fall into one of these categories as the visa applicant. But there are some exceptions. So with the startup visa, the innovator visa, and if you're a global talent visa holder, then you can be appointed as a level 1 user, notwithstanding that you're not yet settled or British. So what would happen if you were, for example, a startup, innovator, or global talent visa holder and you applied for a sponsor license and appointed yourself as both authorising officer? So as I've said, this would be possible because you would be based in the UK at that point. And as level 1 user, so you appointed yourself as level 1 user. As I say, that is possible in this narrow exception. And let's say that you then assigned a certificate of sponsorship to yourself. Well, that's prohibited and the sponsor license would just be revoked. So the rules list the circumstances in which the Home Office will revoke the license, and that includes this situation in which you assign a certificate of sponsorship to yourself. Again, I'm coming to this important exception in a minute. The exception, by the way, is under the expansion worker route. And in that case, you can assign a certificate of sponsorship to yourself. But before we come to that, there's another related question we should answer, which is, can you appoint a different authorising officer and level 1 user, so not yourself, and have them assign a certificate of sponsorship to you? So in other words, this is the situation where you're looking to apply for a skilled worker visa, you're not settled or British, and you want to incorporate the UK company and appoint a different authorising officer and level 1 user and have them assign the certificate to you. Can you do this? Well, it depends on whether the job is genuine. But what does this mean? Well, the Home Office will deem a job to be not genuine if it's been created mainly so that you can apply for entry clearance or permission to stay. So the rules say that a license will be revoked in exactly this situation. So where the job has been created just for you to apply, then it would not be deemed to be genuine. another way of putting this is that the job must really exist independently of your visa application or visa considerations, if you like. Alternatively put, you can ask, would this job exist even if you were not applying for the visa? So was the job advertised, for example? Well, prior to December 2020, you had to advertise for skilled worker roles in a prescribed way, which was called the resident labour market test. But this was removed as a requirement. So whether you advertised or not, advertising is not mandatory, but it's still a relevant consideration when considering whether the role is genuine. In other words, advertising may constitute evidence that there is a job independently of your intention to make a visa application. Another factor is this: is the job the only job in the organisation? So has anyone else been sponsored? And what's the broader business plan? Well, in my sponsor license applications for my clients, I tend to include the business plan in the suite of compliance materials that my clients have ready for any Home Office audit. Another factor is the percentage of shares that you can own in the UK company that's sponsoring you. So before December 2020, if you owned more than 10% of the shares in the sponsoring entity, then you could not get the visa unless you earned over £159,600 per year. So this was the pre-December rule. Parliament removed this rule on the basis, and then they stated this when they did so, genuine vacancy requirement, resident labour market test requirement abolished in favour of a requirement to demonstrate a genuine vacancy. So in removing this technical restriction, Parliament was replacing the narrow technical rules with a broader rule that the job must be genuine. And the same genuineness test is applied at the visa application stage, so not just when you apply for the sponsor license. So in other words, the rules say exactly the same point, and you can see that here. So is self-sponsorship on a skilled worker visa genuine? The answer is it depends. Generally, the greater the ownership of the shares that the main applicant has, the greater the need to demonstrate the business case and that it is genuine, and the greater scrutiny there's going to be of the factors that I've explained. So what about the very limited exception that I've highlighted, in which you can literally self-sponsor in a more direct sense by by appointing yourself as the authorising officer and level 1 user and assigning this certificate of sponsorship to yourself? Well, this is possible, as I say, as an exception, under the expansion worker visa, and that's within the so-called global mobility visa pathway. A UK expansion worker visa allows you to come to the UK to set up a branch of an overseas business that has not started trading in the UK yet. You must already work for the overseas business as either a senior manager or specialist employee. And it replaces the historical sole representative visa. It's no longer possible to make entry clearance applications under the sole representative visa, which was also called the representative of an overseas business visa. So this replaces all of it. And the person applying for the UK expansion worker visa can be appointed as authorising officer. They can also be appointed as level 1 user, and they can also assign the certificate of sponsorship to themselves. So the guidance says that the person must assign the certificate of sponsorship to themselves in order to make an application for entry clearance. So to help you, I've put together a application preparation checklist for, as I say, self-sponsorship under the UK expansion worker visa. And I've put a link to that. It's a free checklist. You can download it just below in the description. I've also put it in my pinned comment below. And that should help you if you're looking for this route to come to the UK as an expansion worker to set up a branch of the business in the UK. So I hope that's helpful. And you can also schedule a call with me. I'd be happy to assist. You just select my consultation service and click again on the link in the description below. I hope that's helpful, and bye for now.